Interpretation. Are you ready to start? Yeah. Okay, thank you. Madam Chairperson of the Transport Committee, Mr. Director of Education, Science and Technology and Innovation of the African Union, honorable members of Parliament, this afternoon we have the honor to receive the Director of Education, Science and Technology and Innovation. It's a joint session, so we have two committees, Committee on Education, Culture, Tourism and Human Resources, as well as the Committee on Transport. And I would like to welcome the members of the Transport Committee, Madam Chair of the committee. Please welcome to this room, which is not necessarily dedicated to us, but we meet here a lot. And for this activity, we who have often been here, we would like to welcome you to you and also to your colleagues who are here with us and who are going to engage with us. To start, I don't think we are going to use the typical protocol. We have only one item on the agenda, but before we begin, we are going to observe a minute of silent prayer or meditation.
Je vous remercie.
Thank you very much. So we have one point on the agenda, item, and so we are not going to take time to get it to be adopted. So it's an information session on the key projects of Agenda 2063 undertaken by the Department of Education, Science and Technology and Innovation of the African Union. So we have the opportunity to have here today the Professor Saidu Madugu, who is a director of Education, Science, Technology and Innovation at the level of the African Union. Mr. Director, welcome to this room 5 of the Pan-African Parliament. And on behalf of all parliamentarians, on behalf of the chair lady of the Transport Standing Committee, and on behalf of all the members, we'd like to welcome you and to express our sincere gratitude and pleasure in welcoming you here today. Agenda 2063 in its implementation as well is a key priority of the African Union, the parliamentarians that we are, as well as the continent at large. And we're happy to discuss with you on specific questions and commitments that you have made at the level of the Department of Science, Education, Science, Technology, and Innovation, so that at the end of this implementation period, we have the results we all expect. Mr. Director, dear Professor, dear colleagues, we are ready for this presentation, and I would like to hand over to you, Mr. Director, for the strategy. Thank you. Thank you. Mr. President of the Committee of Education, Tourism and Sports, Honorable Madam Chair, Madam President of the Standing Committee on Transport, Honorable members of the Education Committee, as well as the Transport Committee, dear guests and all protocol observed, we are really happy to work with you this afternoon on the theme of the year, which is education. I am here with my colleague, Mr. Emmanuel, who is from the education unit. And after the work yesterday, which focused not only on the launching of the seminar, where we did a presentation. My colleague also had discussions, presentation followed by discussions. And like I mentioned, we are really happy to discuss with you in a closer environment, in a more closed environment, so that we can leverage our presence here, but also to engage with you yourselves, because when we talk about Parliament, you are the representatives of the people of the entire African continent, all African people, who are the aspiration, as well as those for whom we have to work to improve their conditions. And when we talk about education, education is the foundation of all development. And really, that is the biggest asset that we can have for the development of the continent. That is to tell you that your committee plays a key role in the development of Africa and its stability. So everything starts with education. If we are here today discussing and thinking about all these key priorities for the development of the African continent, it is because we have been fortunate amongst the 1 billion Africans to be educated. And that's what brought us here. Ladies and gentlemen, like I mentioned earlier, the Parliament plays an important role, and that is what has brought us here to have discussions and exchanges with yourselves, and not just on our various strategies such as CESAR, but also on Agenda 2063 of the African Union, as well as SDG 4, which focuses on education. And the role Parliament has a vital role to play, because Parliament is called upon to develop, but also to propose directives, policies for the executive, for our leaders and decision makers, not only to have the necessary framework to manage the education sector, but also to create, to catalyze decisions so that the education system has the resources it requires to operate optimally. And with regards to resources, we're talking about financial ones, but also human resources and all other decisions and resources that are required to ensure that the education system has all it needs to develop the African of the 21st century that we want, who is going to pilot and direct our countries as well as the world. Africa is at the heart of all interests and desires, and we feel that before the end of the 21st century, if Africa can unite and educate its people, this is going to be the continent of the future, the continent that is going to lead the world in the future. That is why we believe that our presence here today is an opportunity, like I said, so that we discuss generally about the challenges facing the education system on our continent. And I also raised earlier the support, legislative support, but also the development of policies to which you have to bring an important contribution, but also allocation of budgets and monitoring and evaluation of all these decisions and resources. But it is also an opportunity to collaborate on strategic initiatives, as well as the ones that we're going to do jointly with the Pan-African Parliament, as well as the Department of Education, but also the capacities that we need at our level and at your level and at the level of the various countries to build and strengthen the capacity that we need to leverage all the partnerships that we have, the skills that we have, so that we do the best we can for the African learner. But for decision making as well, we need the tools that we need in terms of data and data collection in order to make good decisions at the level of continent as well as at the level of our countries. But we need to know about performance, useful data on education, well, in terms of work, in terms of employment, orientation. So if you can say the kind of orientation we need to identify the profile we need for Africa's development, but also we need to talk about inclusion, generally speaking. So the diversity, equity, inclusion. Even the most disadvantaged people should also be targeted so that they get equal benefits from this entire process. People living with disability, and everybody else, so that we all have equal opportunity in terms of education and leveraging education policies. So we are here because you play an important role, and we need to leverage this unique opportunity to shape education on the continent. And by working in collaboration with you, our department, Education, Science, Technology, and Innovation, is by working with you, we are going to synchronize not just the activities that we roll out, but also to prepare our youth for the challenges of the 21st century. That is, broadly speaking, the introduction that I wanted to share with you. I'm going to hand over to my colleague, Emmanuel, to add other details and information. Mr. Emmanuel.
Protocols duly observed. Mr. Chair, I think the director has ably presented the objective for us as the Department of Education, Science, Technology and Innovation, especially because this is one of the very first interactions that we'll be having with the Parliament in our bid to work closely with the Parliament. Hopefully, through the chairmanship, we are able to foster closer ties and enable the Parliament play its role with regards to advocacy and the domestication of some of the continental strategies that we've hitherto struggled to domesticate in AU member states in the past. And for us, this exchange provides that opportunity to hear and co-create with the members of the committee on opportunities that exist within your own work plans. We could also share with you our work plans with regards to activities for the rest of the year and see how best Parliament can come in. Yesterday during our presentation, we mentioned that the Specialized Technical Committee on Education, Science, Technology and Innovation, that is the Committee of Ministers, will be meeting from the 4th to 8th of November. This interaction provides a big opportunity for the Pan-African Parliament to perhaps consider the idea as presented by the President of Parliament to come up with a declaration from this session that focuses on the theme of the year that we can key into the STC, the Specialized Technical Committee meeting coming up in November, that then goes through to the relevant AUC policy organs and possibly presented as part of the key outcomes of the theme of the year. The chair has mentioned the Agenda 2063. Since this is an informative session, we are happy to state that for us as the Department for Education, Science and Technology, out of the 15 flagships, 2 speaks to what we do. And the first is on the Africa Outer Space Strategy. As you may be aware, the heads of state and government last year, this February, had facilitated the process to operationalize the Africa Space Agency, which will be domiciled in Egypt. That operationalization has kicked off with the appointment of an executive director from Ivory Coast to head that agency and to operationalize the Africa Space Agency. But for us at the Education Division, as you know, the Pan-African University is one of the flagship, but also the Pan-African Virtual and E-University is a flagship that the Commissioner has as one of his key priorities. We think ICT is the way to go if we are to bridge the gap between access and quality. We can't tap from the resources of the diaspora of the haves to facilitate learning in the have-not countries. And that is the vision of the Pan-African University, which has been fully operationalized, but one institute yet to be operationalized, which is the one meant to be in South Africa. Here we have the one in the University of Ibadan. We have the institute at the Jomo Kenyatta University. We have the one in Yaoundé. as well as Clemson in Algeria. So those 4 are already operational. The one in South Africa, as we mentioned yesterday also, has suffered some setback. But hopefully, now that we have our director on board, we're able to unlock those bottlenecks with regards to the operationalization of the institute at the University of Cape Town. Colleagues, honorable members, it is really, we're here to hear from you with regards to how you would want us to support your work as the Committee on Education. And we eagerly wait to receive those feedback and hopefully jointly with the Secretariat develop an action plan with the Committee on Education that we can operationalize within the framework of the African Year of Education, African Union Year of Education for 2024, as well as the implementation of the relevant strategy, be it CESA or TVET. I thank you, Mr. Chair.
Okay, thank you. Je vous remets la parole.
Give you back the floor. Thank you. I thank you, Director. Thank you, Mr. Emmanuel. Madam Chair, honorable members, we have just listened to the presentation made by our 2 hosts, the Director and his collaborator. In a nutshell, as entitled, this is an informative session, which is about the theme of education. So, as presented yesterday, I think that the Director has referred to the continental strategy for education in Africa, and has insisted on the plan that has been elaborated at their level by Horizon 2063. So his collaborator has said that he's expecting us to make proposals on how to collaborate. Mr. Director, honorable members, I would like, first of all, to thank you for your presentation. Indeed, the issue of education is a fundamental one for Africa, because if by the Horizon 2063, if we want to be among the leading continents in this world, we must focus on education. Today, we are lucky enough to have you amongst us because we are a parliament and you are the commissioners of the African Union and you're in charge of education on our continent. I will give the floor later on to honorable members of parliament in order for them to be able to express their concerns and also make proposals. But before that, I wanted to sincerely thank you for the clarity of your presentation. So, Madam Chair, the microphone is open, honorable members, for any possible clarifications or questions. Yes, Madam from Chad. I do apologize, says the chair, since we do not know each other. We know each other by face, but whenever a member takes the floor, he is or she is kindly requested to introduce himself or herself. I thank you, Honorable Chair. We would like to thank the 2 presenters. I'm Amina Ali Idris. I'm the Vice Chair of the Committee of Transport. I would like to reiterate my thanks to our 2 presenters. And since yesterday, they have made good presentations and we have had some good information. I'm saying that education is key for the sovereignty of Africa. And I would like to recall that there is a saying, a Chinese saying, in order to destroy a country, you have to destroy its educational system. We Africans, we would like to decolonize the educational system, and sometimes we would like also to achieve the independence of Africa. Many have raised these problems. In order to decolonize the system, we must to learn our own languages, such as Swahili, for example. And in order to adapt education for the 21st century, we need to train also Africans in order to adapt themselves to the needs of the African continent. I would like to ask a question. What is the status? Because I think this is one of the priorities for the sovereignty of Africa, to learn languages such as Swahili. I thank you. I thank you very much, Honorable Amina from Chad. I would wish that this afternoon that the statements be brief. So after each question, we give the floor to the presenter. I do not know whether it suits you. So when we ask the question, then we have the answer immediately. Mr. Director, you have the floor in order to respond to the question that has been raised by Honorable Amina.
And Honorable Member, it is indeed a statement of fact that for us to decolonize our education ecosystem, our education system, it is important to start reflecting on the medium of instruction, right? Many of our medium of instruction or language of instruction were those handed over to us by our colonial masters. We've seen good examples where countries are starting to instruct their students in their local languages. A case in mind is Ethiopia. A case in mind is, to a large extent, parts of Kenya, to a large extent, northern part of Nigeria, to a large extent, some parts of South Africa. Those are relevant examples that I think we could share experience from. And there are platforms on the continent with which we can share those experiences as to if those medium of instructions or those languages of instructions, localizing languages of instructions have worked. In my view, I think they have worked. The African Union, as you know, does not have, or the Commission does not necessarily have sovereignty, does not have rights to member states' national policies when it comes to instructions and language of instructions with regards to their curricula. But what we've done is to encourage member states to reflect on some of those key points, key nuances, to reflect on, and we've done something similar at the Commission level by instituting Swahili as an official language of the African Union Commission. So if you come to our meetings, Swahili is an official language of the Commission. I'm not sure if PAPS has gotten to that level, but maybe this is a lesson also to reflect our own indigenous language as a medium of communication, even in settings like this. But to say the policy framework, CESA, calls for indigenization of medium of instruction, encouraging member states to adopt their own national languages. One might argue that in member states there are a lot of languages. So what then becomes the nationally accepted language for instruction? But we believe that those are conversations that can only happen at the national level. Ours is to encourage member states that have already gone that path and to bring them to forums and platforms such as the STC to share their experience as to how that has benefited their citizenry. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you very much, Mr. Emmanuel. I want to complete what my colleague said. Pour être peut-être plus proche de.
Maybe to be much closer, I will use French. So, as he has explained, the problem at the level of the African Union Commission is this power. The power of imposing or bringing states to decide. Member states are sovereign. But you, at the level of the Pan-African Parliament, as I said earlier, you represent the peoples. And you can make suggestions which will have a better impact at the level of people's government than the Commission. Of course, the concern of education in local languages is a critical one, because even at the pedagogic level, a child who learns his own level and who has dived into his culture succeeds better. I've gone around the whole Africa, and you see that African countries which have experienced the learning in national languages, at least the experience which I have had in East Africa, South Africa, Southern Africa or Northern Africa, the Swahili, Creole, Arabic, Hausa, we note that these children learn better and more quickly than children who start learning French or English, because they're part of their own culture. When they speak about the object of their own culture, they understand better and they domesticate it. And even from the pedagogical point of view, they understand better than French. So what we advise member states is to start introducing these mother languages at the primary school and introduce gradually foreign languages, because English, French, Chinese, Portuguese, or Russian are foreign languages. So gradually introduce them in order so that the learner, when he or she gets at the secondary school, then he would have a good, or she would have a good command of education in his or her own language, and has the possibility of learning French, Russian, or Chinese, which will enable him or her at the university to be able to manage without getting into this what we call diving into the language. For example, in Mauritius, they start with Creole at the primary school, and in the secondary school, they learn French or English, and everyone ends up by becoming bilingual. I think that in your recommendations or the guidelines, the directive which you would present to member states, this is a means in order to allow these member states to understand and also to bring them to head towards bilingualism. One of your colleagues yesterday gave an example. He said that late President Bibi said that those who were educated in Arabic are more patriotic than those who are educated in French, because Arabic is part of national languages in Chad. When somebody is educated in his or her national language, he becomes more patriotic because it is a matter of culture as well, of the other's culture that we have learned. It is quite normal from the pedagogic point of view and cognitive point of view. When we know better one's culture, we become more patriotic. I lived in Europe and the United States, and at the university, I met university professors. And when you tell them to mention 3 African countries, they would be unable to do it. They do not know these countries. And this is what is done in their curricula. In the curricula, it is the national interest which should prevail on external interests. So your concern is very important and essential. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I thank you very much, Director. I thank you, Mr. Emmanuel. Honorable, I think that now there have been clarifications to your question, honorable members. Yes, honorable?
Angola. Senhor Presidente, queria clarificar se
There is.
Verify if you have interpretation. Yes. I'd like to make 2 comments and 2 questions, if you allow me, Honorable Chair. The first comment I have is a concern. I am part of the few that were the founding members of PAP in 2004 in Ethiopia. I came back to the Pan-African Parliament, and I feel that we continue stuck. We're not moving forward. The same issues, the same items are discussed. One of the concerns I raised at the time was that we are an organization called, in English, objective-driven and not value-based. And when we only establish objectives, but we don't create a base of values and common principles, we have challenges. This is the first comment I had. The second comment is related to the presentation which we had yesterday from the representatives of the Education Department from the AUC, where we noticed that at the African Union level, we have ideas, policies, and positive strategies for the evolution of our continent in the scope of education. But at the same time, the same presenters stated that at the level of the member states, the level of implementation is very low. So what's the value of this? The heads of state go there, they discuss, they adopt, they go back to their countries, they don't implement. So where is the value? Where are we going towards? We're just talking shop. We're just chatting. What are the concrete impacts in the livelihoods of people? This was my second observation. Now, on to my 2 questions. First, on the philosophy of the standardization of the curricula and the qualifications of our learning system. In Africa, we have the issue of having the Arabic zone, the Francophone zone, the Anglophone zone, and the Lusophone zone. And this level of standardization is easier for a young person with its qualifications if they want to continue in the master's or PhD level, because he's Lusophone. His qualifications will be recognized in Portugal and Brazil
but not recognized in Ethiopia or in Ghana. So how are we evolving in the standardization of curricula and qualifications for that, so that an Angolan young man, can, instead of going to Brazil, can go to Ethiopia? Is going to have a better understanding of what is to be African instead of going to Portugal or to Brazil. So this is the first question. And the second and last question is regarding the Pan-African universities. I understood that in other regions they are established, be it in the Arabic region or in the West Africa and East Africa, but here in our southern region, it seems that not yet. It will be here in South Africa eventually. So if at the level of the standardization of qualifications we are not okay, how can an Angolan young man come to the Pan-African University in South Africa? And then I acknowledge that there is no common knowledge that such universities exist, at least in Angola. I don't know for other countries. We don't know of the existence of Pan-African universities for the youth to register. How can they register if they don't even know of the existence? And then at the level of the structuring of such universities, is it only scholarships or they have housing and hostels for students? So we don't have any information at our level as members of the PAP. We have the obligation of bringing clarity to our citizens, but we don't know ourselves. How are we going to clarify? So 2 comments and 2 questions. Thank you, Honorable Chair.
Merci beaucoup.
Thank you very much, Honorable Abel. I think that we will stick to our methodology, that is a question and then answer. So, Honorable, could you please wait a little bit and you will be given the floor later on. So, Mr. Director, Honorable Abel has introduced himself. He is one of the founding members and he knows the objectives of the establishment of the Pan-African Parliament. He has come back and he has the feeling that we are still like nascent, and he has made 2 comments and 2 questions. I'll give you the floor to respond to these concerns. Thank you. I thank you, Mr. Chairman. I thank the Honourable for his questions, which are relevant concerns and also very relevant questions which we are asked very often. As you have noted, our organization, the African Union, the Pan-African Parliament, as you said, we have very nice texts and very beautiful strategies. But as you said, unfortunately, which member state, which are not really implemented in member states. And we in the African Union deplore that. And as we said it, the problem is at the level of member states, or the idea that we have of the African Union or the Pan-African Parliament. Each member state thinks that it is a member state but still independent and sovereign, and that we cannot impose anything on them. This is probably why, this is the break, because if I compare this to other continental organizations in Europe, the guidelines of the European Union apply to member states. This is not the case with the African Union. If the member states wants, it applies. If not, it doesn't apply. As I underline that, it is up to you. We think that the Pan-African Parliament has more power than the Commission. You represent the peoples, and when you are representative of the peoples, you represent the whole Africa. Normally, a parliament, if it decides, then member states should follow. Now, the speaker has switched to English. What to do in order to get to that stage is for you to reflect. Maybe we can make proposals to you. But if states, if the peoples have mandated you to represent them and decide for them, then we should normally respect your decisions. We should not be discouraged. Maybe we can succeed one day. Other concerns, the standardization of curricula and the Pan-African University, you are quite right. Normally, an Angolan would like to go to an Pan-African Institute in South Africa, and this should not represent any problem. When he is graduated, his degree should be recognized in Angola, in Mozambique, in Sierra Leone, in Egypt, or in Ethiopia, or in Kenya. This shouldn't be a problem. And he is called to work everywhere. And this takes place at 2 or 3 levels. First, the training curricula. Knowledge once at the university or at the primary school is universal. If African member states manage to harmonize their curricula, then this will allow them to have training programs which are equivalent. I wouldn't say be the same, but which are equivalent. If Angola wishes, then it can put in place Angolan realities, but that they are transport in South Africa, it should be the same in South Africa. So as a result, we started with the Pan-African University, which did not have a rector or vice-chancellor, but with the effort of the commissioner in charge of education, science, technology, innovation, this Pan-African University has had a vice-chancellor since a year or a year ago. And as you said, in our countries, youngsters ask us our questions, and they do not know about these institutes. Yes, they are right. You are right. They do not know about these institutes, and we're trying to popularize that because these are institutes of the African Union. And the Institute of Tlemcen in Algeria, or in Nigeria or Cameroon, or in Kenya, and the last one, the one in South Africa, they should be known by all Africans. What are their orientations, what kind of training they offer, and how is access done to these institutions. These institutes give scholarships. They organize studies at the level of master's and PhD. And only those who would go on internet can get the information, while the African Union conveys the information to ministries of foreign affairs, which unfortunately they do not transmit, and many do not have the information. The other thing is, since at the level of state they neglect information. Before, we had the problem that somebody who has studied in Algeria and comes to Cameroon, he would find some difficulties in finding a job. And with the commissioner, we are reflecting in order to resolve this problem. That is, to be able to, for the degrees to be accredited by international organizations. We have what we call CAMES, that is the African Malagasy Board for Education, which is which is an entity for accreditation of the degrees of the Francophone sphere. And we thought, why not do that also with other institutes? Get these institutes accredited in order to allow students who graduate from this institute to be recognized as being competent throughout Africa. Because in Francophone countries, whenever a university is part of commerce, its degree is automatically recognized in all countries. And we're encouraged to do it for the 5 institutes, and we are reflecting. And we have contacted already commerce and other accreditation organizations in the 5 regions of Africa, and also to go further, have the institute in charge of engineering in addition to this regional accreditation, get an international accreditation of its discipline, because there are institutes that are part of specialities which are difficult to have. We can look for an international accreditation organization in order to give them an accreditation so that the degrees are internationally accepted, such as graduating from MIT or Harvard. We know that you have training which could allow you to work anywhere. But we are looking for the support of the Parliament, and we think that you have the power to help us and help Africa to go in the right direction. I give the floor now to my colleague in order to complement. Thank you.
It was ably, addressed all of those questions, but also inform honorable members that the African Union Commission, in collaboration with its partners, last year developed what we call the African Continental Qualifications Framework, the ACQF. In our bid to address the issue of quality, relevance, comparability of qualification, was what led us to the development of that framework. Currently, we are developing the platform that will enable for referencing of qualification. That is, somebody who is in Namibia could go on this platform, put in their level of qualification, and they're able to automatically generate what level they fit in a country like Ghana. So cross-referencing. This is work in progress, but the framework already exists. We are going into the practical element of it, which is the implementation of the framework with the development of that platform. We believe very strongly that once we address the issue of quality, we can enable movement and trust within the education ecosystem. Many people have serious doubts as to the quality, and that's why movement has not necessarily taken place in some instances. Some of the barriers that we think are there are mainly because of trust of qualification. Once we solve that problem, we think that the others could fall into place. Not forgetting that we still have the protocol on free movement that has not necessarily been fully adopted. It is easier for an European to move in Francophone West Africa, a French person to move in Francophone West Africa, than for a Kenyan to do so. Yeah, but there is a protocol on free movement. To what extent have member states signed this treaty? To what extent have member states relaxed visas? To what extent have member states facilitated movement for all Africans? So when we begin to answer some of those questions, we can then be rest assured that movement of students, learners, and teachers would be easier. But the framework exists. For us at the Commission level, we are going a step ahead with implementation, with the development of a referencing platform with the support of our partner, the European Union, in this regard. And hopefully, when it is fully functional, we can come back to member states through the responsible fora, the STC, the Ministerial Conference of Ministers of Education to report on the progress we've made with the development of this platform. But you are right, Honorable Member, we cannot speak of progress in the education system if we don't address the issue of quality assurance. The African Union has made an attempt also to develop what we call the Pan-African Quality Assurance and Accreditation Framework. The Pan-African University is also in the conversation of having a Pan-African Quality Assurance and Accreditation Agency that has a continental outlook for the institute, in addition to the regional accreditation institutes that my director has mentioned. We have one, we have CAMES, we have the one for the SADC Qualification Authority, and so many others. But we believe they need to come together under one Pan-African agency to address the issue of regional cross-referencing also. It is easier, I think at the regional level we've done quite well. The RECs have done quite well. ECOWAS, it is easier to move. SADC, it is easy to move. But continental movement has been a great challenge. And we think some of those initiatives that we have in place could assist in solving those challenges. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Merci beaucoup.
Thank you very much. Thank you for your responses, Honorable Abel. Our experts have just responded to your two questions and comments. I hope that we can move forward. Not sufficient, but we can make progress. Yes, thank you. It's normal. As a founding member, you see how much progress has been made since 2004, and you're thinking we shouldn't still be here, but thank you, Honorable. Yes, here on the right, there was another Honorable who wanted to speak. Yes, is that you? Yes, Professor. Yes, you, and then maybe the other one here, and then you come after them. Then you will be the fourth.
Chair, when I raise up my hand, first, my name is Hambiuka from Namibia.
The name?
Hambiuka from Namibia. When I raise up my hand, I was having two questions, or I was looking for clarity. But one aspect, then a bit, it was touched, or it was covered. I was trying to, when I listened earlier, I thought there's something missing here, because the AU, the head of state, there are players, they are all players. They don't have a striker in their game. The PAP, Pan-African Parliament, we are talk show. We don't have a striker. Why I'm saying striker is that a person who should, or institution, who should implement what we are discussing or what we are passing. So the head of state discuss, deliberate on the matter, then they think that they have to pass it to Pan-African Parliament. Pan-African Parliament discuss it, but from there it dies. It dies a natural death, because the members state representing in the PAP, they are not given the mandate that when you are going back now to your country where you come from, please report to that parliament. Even if you are giving just a feedback, you give them a report, the majority of them, the members of your parliament, will not take it serious. You leave it there. You are just giving them information. After sharing information, what happened? And when you are coming back to parliament, or to Pan-African Parliament, you are not being asked. We don't are doing evaluating to see that what did you do? How far did you go? So you just come back a different topic. You enjoy among yourself then with another new topic without analyzing for you to see that did you implement number 1, did you implement number 2, or did you implement number 3? So we come then with a new topic. To me, there's something missing there, because we are all, including the head of state, they are politicians, the member of parliament or PAP, we are politicians, we don't have an implementer. What will happen there? Can we create a body or institution to implement whatever we are deciding as politicians? That's one thing, one aspect I was looking at. The other one is that there was a question when the presenter started, said, how are we going to work together? To me, to answer that one, simple is that we should have a memorandum of understanding. Then to pin out how are we going to work, and that's what the parliament have to do and what the AU of the Department of Education have to do. I think for us, we should create the officials from AU, from PAP, should create a draft. Then it's for us to approve that draft, the memorandum of understanding. Then from there, we'll take it up. That's my contribution, Honorable Chair. Thank you very much.
Merci beaucoup.
Thank you, Honorable Ambiuka. I think it's a contribution, like you said. It's not necessarily a question, but it's a serious concern, effectively, because I think yesterday, when I was with the director here present, we were talking about it. Because effectively, we have many resolutions that have been adopted. Whenever we have a session, we work on many topics, and after there is no follow-up. And just like since we have the luck to have you here, we're not going to let you go without talking about this. But it is important that the other members should be active and interested in the resolutions and the follow-up. Because you cannot say that we come here and talk about education. It's the theme of the year. We meet, and then after we return to our various countries, everything is just abandoned. So I was saying that, Mr. Director, I'm not going to let you go so easily. So it's good that you're here, so that you are rest assured that I'm going to continue following up, because the objective of what we are doing is to have concrete solutions. And I think that it is the concern of Honorable Ambiuka. And we are hopefully going to have concrete suggestions. There is the president of the parliament who made concrete suggestions yesterday. We're going to see with our committee clerk to see how to get in touch with all the leaders of our countries, because when we come here, we have mission heads per country, and each country head should be able to give us the strategies that they have implemented at country level as far as education is concerned. If that can be done, then we can also create a working group who are going to collaborate with us, so that before the end of the year, we can make concrete suggestions to the African Union. So thank you very much, Honorable Abioka. I don't know if it's fine. Yes, that's fine. Yes, that's really a very good suggestion. Thank you. Yes, Honorable. Thank you very much, Chair, for giving me the floor.
Convidados, eu tenho aqui duas.
I have two contributions. Translation is active. My name is Euclides Silva. I'm a MP from Cape Verde. I'm here at PAP for the past 2 years, and I am part of this committee. And at the same time, I'm also vice chair of the caucus. The contribution I would like to bring to this committee, given the importance of the theme that we have been debating here. In the first point, I believe that is consensual in the scientific community that human beings in modern times, in other words, ourselves, our predecessors, they came from Africa and colonized the world. In other words, the Europeans, the Americans, the Chinese they have a common origin. In other words, they come from one single race, which is the human race. The second point is that
In the matter of education, here I agree with the Honorable Shivukuvuk because, for example, in the European Union, a certificate from any member state is valid in all the member states, and it does not require any acknowledgement, any accreditation. A certified university in Portugal, in Spain, in Germany has recognized the certificates. In Africa, we still have this problem that, in fact, needs to be resolved at the level of the UA Commission. The other point is that do we really want a true African integration? Do we, in fact, wish for a true, real mobility of African brains? I think the African Union, I don't know whether the program exists or not. If it doesn't exist, we ought to create it, which is a program for academic mobility, student mobility. A student that does its first year in Angola could go for the second semester in Cape Verde or in South Africa, and promoting also such interaction amongst university students from Africa. That experience already exists elsewhere. The Erasmus program in Europe functions very well. And we at African level, at continental level, I believe that we ought to, firstly, we ought to implement a program of this type. This will allow not only the sharing of experience, but will also allow that the experiences get to know each other better. Because if we take a closer look, tomorrow we'll be debating the matter of the free movement. There's still a lot of barriers. The Honorable Shivukuvuk mentioned that the programs are not known. You know, the Pan-African University is not that well known amongst the African peoples in the midst. But the institutions are also little known. The PAP, in fact, may be known amongst the parliamentarians. The Summit of Heads of State, that which therein is decided, oftentimes is left there amongst them in that space. Heads of State and African people that we are here in representing oftentimes do not feel the presence and the existence of such things. So to create a program for academic mobility, I don't have a recipe here of how it ought to be created. Would be a manner, a form to promote the integration of the African youth within their own continent. This, to finish, would contribute to unify the patterns of teaching here on the continent. As we know, there is a great the degree of disparity. There are countries that, in fact, produce great intellectuals, and other countries are still debating matters of are there enough chairs for the pupils to sit and to listen to this? Are we still discussing millions of children that continue out of the schooling system? So I think this program could also contribute to harmonize, so that we may harmonize the education system in Africa. But really, at last essential point ought to be the acknowledgement, the accreditation of the qualifications that are given not only by schools, universities, and professional training centers, so that we may have true African integration, because I believe that is the main objective of all of us here in this room. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Honorable. Mr. Director, in his comments, there was a specific concern, so I'm going to hand over the floor to you to respond appropriately. Thank you very much, Chair. I think that the concern raised by Honorable real. Thank you. For the recognition of certificates, we spoke about it earlier. It is the issue of accreditation agencies, be they regional or international. We are going to try and work at the level of the Commission, and especially in the department, to find a solution to ensure that certificates are accredited and this issue is resolved. Now, the second one on the Pan-African University, we also spoke about it. We need to try and ensure that it is well known, and that these 5 institutes get more recognition, because you are right, at the level of African countries, they are not really well known, but for each institute, When you take each one, there are at least 40 nationalities. Students who have scholarships at master's and PhD level, and who are studying. The students who have been to these schools, very often they intermarry, they have skills and knowledge everywhere. That is the beginning of integration, and that has to grow exponentially, and we need to use all the communication tools at our level to ensure that these schools get better known, so that others get the opportunity to also apply and get scholarships and study in these centers of learning. The other aspect concerning integration, I think you are right. It is at the level of countries that we have to work harder to ensure that there is a real integration. And it is through real integration that I can go from Cape Verde to Egypt or to South Africa and not feel like a stranger. I should feel like an African traveling across the African continent. And that, obviously, it is through the work of the various standing committees that we can try and identify the mechanisms that we need to put in place so that integration should actually be effective. Very often when we go to Europe, we can go from Spain all the way to the Netherlands, not feel that there are borders. And that is what integration is. We don't feel it when we cross international borders. But even in Southern Africa, at the level of SADC, we still have not achieved that level of integration. Whereas we talk about integrated communities. And so we need to think together and find the mechanisms so that Africans can meet each other, can feel integrated on the continent, be it on the education level, but in other areas. I'm going to ask my colleague to complete my answer if he has other things to say.
One key instrument with which we use to promote mobility on the continent, and that is the Pan-African University. And as the director said, if you take one of those institutes, you are able to count at least 40 nationalities on the African continent taking courses to build their personal and professional capacities. And that is how we are contributing to the issue of academic mobility. And this is not limited to just students, but also academians being able to move and instruct in each of those universities. But I think the parliament is also a good opportunity to highlight one key issue we've had with regards to previous instruments that we were using to promote academic and student mobility. That instrument was called the Mwalimu Nyerere Scholarship Mobility Program. We ran this program for more than 10 years. But because the European Union, who were funding this program, pulled out, we were unable to continue because of lack of funding. Member states were not willing to fund such an academic mobility program. This program saw to the mobility of more than 10,000 students within the space of 10 years. So we must reflect on how we fund the union and how we fund programs at the union. And that is all I would say. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Merci beaucoup.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Yes, so you, dear experts. Yes, Prof, you have the floor.
The Samatar from Somalia. 2 points I would like to want to raise and a question. A question first concern about the indigenization of education at the primary or secondary level. Somalia did this in 1975. One of the mistakes that the government of the time made, retrospectively as I study these things, was that it did not maintain the strength of learning foreign languages at the same time, Arabic, English, occasionally French in some parts. And that created sort of an instability in the system such that the kids were moving forward in their languages, but they were lacking in terms of how to deal with the bigger world. So that's one thing we have to be very careful about. The question I have, and maybe a commentary, is that appearance is not the same as essence. And it seems to me Africans, all of us, are wishful thinkers. We want to look like Europe. So we renamed the African Union from the Organization of African States to the African Union because that's the cool thing to do and follow Europe. But we didn't have the legs to stand on, to be able to do what they have done. This is the question and concerns that you are raising. I've been in the academy for 35 years, been teaching for 35 years, and I'm just stuck, absolutely struck by the unrealism of Africans, and particularly African leaders. And we can complain here and do all of these things. But I'm going to challenge the advocates of the Pan-African University. It's not going to work, I'm going to claim. Okay? Every country has universities. Okay? What's the quality of those universities? Can they compete with the Koreans? Can they compete with the Indians? No, they cannot. None of our universities can actually match up. And so another way of creating the African Union, a la European Union, is to create an African university. It's not going to work. I have some propositions I'll be happy to share with you, but it's just simply not going to work. Mimicking is not reality. We have to wake up. Mimicking is not reality. And consequently, rather than engage in these kind of rhetorical arguments, heart of the disease is the African Union, the way it's constituted and the way it's created. That's where the disease is, not the officials sitting here. Okay. And so what I would like to suggest is that I think our children, African children, whether they come from the north or the south or the east or the west, okay, wherever they study, they need to have the capacity and the wherewithal of that education that can compete with others. So it may be useful to adopt a dual strategy, okay? A strategy that's highly focused, okay? I mean, if you study, I've studied in the United States, if you study Europe and America, you'll see exactly what they have done. You study Koreans. I teach a course on Southeast Asia, political economy of Southeast Asia. And if you look at what they do, it's categorically different from what we have been trying to do for the last 40 years. Okay? We are mimicking rather than touching the substance of what they do and how they do. Okay? So I would like to suggest the following. I mean, I'm glad my colleague here talked about Muallimu scholarship. The European Union is funding it. And we expect, on the one hand, we hate the Europeans because they colonized it, and we want to get out of their armpit. But on the other hand, we go and carry the plate and said, you know, who will contribute to this? Okay, madness, total madness. Okay, and so rather than say, we want to have, you know, 4 universities, 5 African universities, it might be better to create one African university, one. And it's not like any other university, University of Nairobi, University of Pretoria, University of Casablanca, or University of Cairo, or wherever else. That university, every country is going to put, let's say, we are 54 countries. Every country is going to put $10 million on that university. Let's start with Africa's premier medical university, just one. And every country contributes $10 million, and then 10 of its best high school students will go up there and study. They will study, in this case, medical sciences, but also languages, okay? What that will do is to create a very concentrated energy and resources such that the young men and women who are coming out of there will be able to go back to their countries, create the networks locally, okay, and compete with anybody from anywhere in the world. What we are doing is replicating the universities we already have, and it's absolutely meaningless. So I think it's time to stop that, okay, and begin to think strategically, whether it's in the area of the economy, whether it's in the area of education, whether it's in the area of whatever else, a very different model that actually will work from day one. And every country in the continent will have a stake in that. The final thing I want to say is the following, is that there are always exceptions to the rule, okay? Everybody is ordinary. We want to have exceptions, okay? And exceptions that when somebody from Europe or America or Asia or Latin America comes and they look at her, they will blink, not laugh, but they will blink and sober up, okay? This is the kind of a system, in my opinion, that we need to be thinking about. Thank you very much.
Merci beaucoup.
I thank you very much, Professor. I thank you, Honorable. I think that that you have made more proposals than questions. And now I would like to give the floor to Professor Saidu and his collaborator in order for them also to reflect on the issues that you have just raised. Thank you.
Honorable Chair, and thanks to the distinguished honorable member for that. We take it as guidance. Yeah, but to say that the Pan-African University is one university, what we've done is to leverage on comparative advantage across countries to place institutes in those countries. For example, the one in Nigeria, the University of Ibadan, leveraging on the faculty and Center of Excellence with regards to life sciences, basic sciences and life sciences. The one in Yaoundé, leveraging on governance and the expertise and faculty of the University of Yaoundé. The one in Algiers, Clemson, leveraging on energy and water, climate, as well as water resources. So the university has just one rectorate, it is one university. I just wanted to make that point clear. But the guidance from the honorable member is also one that I think is worth taking forward with regards to standing out and making sure that we are not just creating another university that is just, the same. On the one hand, we hear members saying we need to facilitate intra-Africa mobility. In our view, that is one way we are contributing to that conversation with the meager resources that we have, providing scholarship opportunities for students across the continent to move from their home country to this university to study. We can do better with regards to the scale. We can do better with regards to the quantity. We can do better with regards to the quality. But all of those require resources. The honorable member attempted to bring us back to reality, but at the same time also proposed an impossible. perhaps wishful thinking to say that countries should commit 10 million or resources. Even the Pan-African University, which is their own institution, suffers from inadequate funding. So those are the issues. Do we create another? Perhaps Parliament can add their voice to say that member states must fund the Pan-African University so that it can do what it ought to do. If you check the status of the Pan-African University, it is supposed to be a model university for the continent. It is supposed to promote and facilitate intra-African mobility. It is supposed to facilitate academic excellence across board. The statute is quite clear, but you need resources. The commission is your commission. The union is your union. If you do not fund it, there is little or nothing the commission can do. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Emmanuel. I want to complete. Honorable, j'aimerais vous dire que...
Honorable, I would like to tell you that when I joined the commission, I had the chance, so I've been lucky or unlucky during the first week to attend a meeting of the chairperson and the deputy chairperson, commissioners and directors, and amongst us in order to prepare the report of the end of mandate. And as an academic, what I heard, and I had exactly the same reaction as yours. I had the same reaction, but as staff of the African Union, I had to get myself into the mold. I just reacted like you did. I said, we cannot have what we wish while we are not putting the means that are needed. He has spoken about means, and he wanted to create a prize to reward Africans and from contributions of partners. Member states should put the necessary means that are needed in order to achieve the expected result and not mimic or expect others to do it. You are perfectly right. You have reacted as a university academic with an open mind and with a large vision. Now, how are we going to help our member countries to get to that stage? This is the point. We should reflect and find the necessary approaches in order to go in this direction. Otherwise, on the essence, I fully agree with you. I will end it here, Mr. Chairman, and if there are any other internal discussions, then we will have the opportunity to deepen this discussion. Thank you, Director. Yes, I see. Yes, Professor, would you like to react or ask a question, a comment? Yes, because after your intervention, yes, the Honorable and Madam the Chair, and you. So another comment, we will give you the opportunity to make your comment. Yes, Professor, your comment, please.
Vous voulez intervenir?
Madame, you would like to take the floor?
No.
No?
My name is Mamwako from the Kingdom of Lesotho. I have just two concerns. I have learned through experience that our students are well educated but they're sitting down with their certificates due to unemployment. And I put to our commissioner, if we can orientate our children to start study vocationally, technically, and academically, because there are so many students who can do better with their hands than academically. I suggest that it's best for them to study what they know best, because unemployment is covering the whole continent. For us to at least try to reduce that, let them go and study. Let's orientate them to go back to school, take technical studies. Instead of producing the job seekers, let us start training the product that will at least employ others. That's my concern. If we can go to the TVS, I think that's the best thing I think we can do for our Africa, because it's going to help us to empower them, even those people who are not working, even those ones who are not educated. They can be given vocational training, at least to do something, to put a loaf of bread on the table. I thank you.
Merci beaucoup.
I thank you very much, Honorable Member. Mike, your mic, please.
So, Mr. Chair, I'm asking for your indulgence. My suggestion or question has to do with what my colleague just raised. So if I could add mine, so they take it and answer. Thank you very much. That's one leg of what I have on the table. I heard about equity in education. And anytime I hear about equity in education, the emphasis is always on, or mostly on, disabilities. But I can also see another angle or dimension of inequity in the way we support students in the educational sector. For example, in my country, Ghana, after the basic education, there are those who would want to further up in the senior high schools. And so for those who prefer to go to the senior high schools, they are supported by government. Government takes care of their tuition fees, government feeds them and all that. But there are others who, by their own assessment, take a decision that academic work, I can't do it. But I realize that I can do well in sewing, for example, carpentry, for example. And so I don't want to use the formal channels of education, but I wish to learn this trade from somebody who teaches, who does dressmaking. That is an informal way of teaching some of our students. Unfortunately, they are left to their fate. Government does not support them in any way. So my question is, how do we dovetail this one into the formal sector so that we have students who have completed the basic, they enroll into the informal sector of training, they come out as dressmakers, those who do hair, those who dress the hair. There are people who also want to do carpentry, masonry, and all that. What kind of strategy can we use for government to support this sector? It helps in a way of reducing unemployment in our continent. Since I'm on, if chairman will allow, my last one is about the issue of anytime talking about AU hasn't got the power to call countries, member countries to order when they fail to do something. I'm disgusted. Like my colleagues have alluded to earlier on, that we have an AU made up of member countries. We table an issue, well, we identify a challenge, and we call ourselves, let's sit down and discuss the problem. We float ideas, we brainstorm. Eventually, the issues come up, and we crystallize that and say that this is the way to go. And so member countries go implement what we have decided. They don't implement. So we come year after year talking about same things. For how long are we going to do it? I thought that when you have a child in the house, you ask him to do something, he doesn't do it the first time. The second time, he doesn't do it. The third time, there is something that you, the parent, you have to do to the child. In the case of governance, we can talk about sanctions. Have we ever sat as a people to think about what sanctions to be used to deal with such countries? In fact, I prefer to have an AU with a small number of member states, which is effective, than to have an AU with a very large member countries, which is not effective. That is what we're having. So the debate we are having today, the conversation we are having this afternoon, if you go back 5 years to the records of PAP, you'll find the same issues raised 5 years ago, 10 years ago, 15 years ago, 20 years ago. If we don't have a way to stop it, we'll go another 5 years, same debate, same issues, and it'll be on and on and on. Can't we have a sanction regime? Can't we sit and talk and decide on which sanctions we can use? If we have done it before, let us know. If we haven't had any discussions on sanctions, let us know. Thank you very much.
Yes, thank you very much. Thank you very much, Honorable. Yes, Madam Chair, I think that you will probably be the last speaker. So we are at the stage of comments. So I'll come to you, Honorable. I'll come to you, Honorable from Benin. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would like to thank the members for the good quality of the information. I have a few concerns. As a young Pan-African Parliament member, I was here in March and I came back. So what I learned from the comments and the attitudes of heads of state bring me to wonder and ask myself and ask questions. We members of Parliament, our duty is to boost our governments through the decisions that are made and through the agreements that are made and the ratification of agreements and conventions. But I just have the feeling, and this is the question I would like to ask, have a feeling that all the texts to be ratified, all the conventions to be ratified, and all the decisions that have been taken at the level of Parliament, is there any minimum list, at least of the fundamental points, which we will bring to the attention of our government in order to encourage them and request them to sort out what has not been sorted out. So this is my first concern. My second concern is that we all know that education is an area with a high consuming area in terms of finance. And when you go to our countries, you see that children leave at 12 and you see too many of them on the streets. And these are children who go to general education schools. And even at the universities, there are too many to end up without any qualification. And as a consequence, there are employment problems that are faced, and there are social problems that are faced. So according to you, which proposal would you make to us which has to do with the funding of education? This is my second question. And there is the problem, the issue of the popularization. Even in our own countries, there are relevant laws that we enact, but very often we are told that there are no means to popularize these laws, to make them known. And when you take measures at the level of parliament, and those who have mandated you, population, are not informed about the content of these measures, I think their implementation becomes very difficult. So I do not know at the level of the Pan-African Parliament whether there is any structure which is in charge of popularizing measures and texts and provisions that we take here. And how is this done? How is the issue of popularization taken care of? And particularly as concerns education. These are my main concerns. I thank you. Thank you, Honorable. I think, yes, we will give you the floor, and then, Professor, please give us your comments, and then I'll give the floor to the other members. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. One of our colleagues from the AU said that's daydreaming. Well, there's an answer to daydreaming. And that answer was put in place by the late president of Botswana, President Maseri. In 1975, he wrote a note, said, "Without leadership, the people shall perish." So if you don't dream, you are dead to start with, period. Give you two examples about this. Number one, let me tell you a little bit about Korea, South Korea. South Korea does not have iron ore, does not have coal, but they decided to build and compete with the giants of the steel manufacturing countries in the world, America, Britain, France, Germany, the whole lot. So they went to the sort of a World Bank, our bogeyman. And the World Bank said, you don't have a comparative advantage in this, so go away. Then they guilt-tripped the Japanese, given what the Japanese did to them in the Second World War, okay? And they were able to get money from the Japanese. Then they put into place, they didn't have any skills at that point in time, no experience. As a young man in Europe, I worked in a steel factory, so I understand what that meant. Within a decade, not only were they able to produce steel competitively, but they also laid out a plan which said, what are we going to do with this steel? Are we just going to ship raw steel? No, we want to become the biggest and the most effective producer of ships. And they did it. Had they not dreamt, they will still be sitting on their butts in South Korea. Final thing here. A French scholar wrote a book in 1961, I think. His name was René Dumont. And the title of that book was False Start in Africa. We have been on that false start and repeating it year after year after year. Why do I want to say that every African country should be able to put $5–10 million on the table? The poorest country can't afford it. If we are members of parliament and we cannot do that, then we should close this talking shop here. And then what will that do? You have $250 million. You establish one university, exactly like the flagship we are talking about the Korean steel factory. This time only it may be in the medical sciences. Okay? And then you bring Africans, the brightest high schoolers from all the countries, 54 countries, 200 some odd students a year, and they will get to know one another, they will work together, and then when they go back, okay, they will be able to create small cells in their own countries while depending on that central university in terms of research guidance, innovations in health and treatment, and so on and so forth. A different kind of integration, qualitative rather than quantitative integration, okay? But if dreaming is a disease and a crime, then let's close shop. Thank you.
Merci beaucoup, Professor.
I thank you very much, Professor. I think that we have just 3 minutes left, but we will go up to 15 minutes. So I would like to kindly request the honorable members to be brief. Honorable, you have the floor for your comments.
Agradeço a oportunidade.
I thank you for the opportunity. I don't like to speak too much because people always say that I'm polemic, but I'm not optimistic, non-pessimistic. I try to be realistic. For that reason, I commend the technicians from the African Union, the experts, for their idealism and wishful thinking. The idea of creating the Pan-African universities might be brilliant, but why not create a different program that can harness the existing national universities? Why are we going to create new institutions that become mediocre? You go to Google and check the top 10 universities of Africa. 8 are South African, 1 in Nairobi, and the other from Cairo. Why don't we have a program of strengthening the national universities of each country, conduct temporary assessments of the curricula, temporary assessment of the quality of the teaching, temporary assessment of the quality of the structures, establish a ranking to define that all countries within a certain time frame are supposed to attain to this ranking, and instead of having 5 universities that seem to be good but they are mediocre, let's have national universities which are acceptable and to which the African Union is able to concentrate on that, can assess and guide the countries that your universities are on this or that ranking. Improve here and improve that. Make programs to improve the teaching, the teachers, trainings, recycling of teachers. Honestly speaking, I commend you for your efforts and your idealism. Thank you, Honorable Chair.
Thank you very much, Honorable. Honorable, I think I'll come to this side. Ma'am, you have the floor, Honorable.
Monsieur le Président.
Thank you very much, Chair, for giving me the floor. I just have a comment with regards to what the professor from Somalia has just said. I perfectly agree with him on the idea of having one single university for Africa. It is good for the member states to contribute. Even one country can do it. Some of us developing countries that are fighting to get food security and so on cannot do it. I can give the example of Egypt and Algeria. If their leaders decide, they can do it. And the Pan-African Parliament, really, it's our founding fathers who decided. And that's why we're here today. And so we have the same vision for Africa, and we want to have one system, education system for the entire continent. And that's a good thing. I will give you an example. A petroleum company has already done this example. Schlumberger, for those who know Schlumberger, they have training centers everywhere on the continent. So, for example, in Africa, they have one center in Egypt. In Europe, it's France. In the Middle East, it's in Abu Dhabi. And all these training centers, all the employees of Schlumberger in the entire world. If you can't get to these countries, you can get the training that they need, and you can work in the petrochemicals for anywhere in the world. Why can a body with about more than 50 members cannot do it? More than 50 members. One country can do it. And the results, obviously, now we're talking. But if in 30 years, 40 years, 50 years, I think it's something that we can hand over to our children. So one country, if one country takes the decision, then they can do it to change the education sector to meet the needs of Africans. Some will say that these are visions and dreams and ambitious projects. All achievements in this world are really ambitious projects. And it is a good dream to have one education system and work on it even for 30, 40, 50 years. And create a system for the 21st century. So I really ask you, our experts, to guide us on this. How do we identify a country, or how do we make a suggestion so that is done for our people? Because for some of us, for example, we're still talking about free movement of people and goods. Just to get visas for some countries, it will take about 3 months. And they will still reject you, even as a parliamentarian of the Pan-African Parliament. Whereas some other colleagues, it just took them 2 days. But so access is still a problem. So I ask you to give us guidance so that our dreams should become more achievable. How do we get one university in Africa where everybody can study in, which we can use to redesign our education system for Africa? Thank you. Thank you very much, Honorable. We are getting to the end of our working session. So I'll hand over to the chairperson of the Transport Commission so that she asks questions if she has any. Ma'am, you have the floor.
شكرا.
I thank you. I thank you, Mr. Chairman of the Committee on Education, for this joint meeting between your committee and our committee in charge of transport, industry, technology, and science. We'd like to thank the representative of the African Union for his very good presentation. on the flagship projects, part of the agenda of 2063, which is taken care of by the Department of the African Union in charge of education and innovation. So what are the future requirements in the field of education in Africa in order to achieve African integration, regardless of gender, sex? Education is key in Africa. This is why we need to build up education systems in Africa for a prosperous future. It is probably because of colonialism that we have different languages, different traditions. Although the continent is one, the question is why Africa lacks skilled manpower. Yes, sure, because of the lack of education opportunities and because of the great number of dropouts. The West has colonized us in order to plunder our resources, and they're trying to colonize us once again because of our resources. It is on this basis that we have to work in order to bridge the digital divide. Thank God, African awareness has been prevailing, and if we take Agenda 2063 agenda to Agenda 20 of the African Union that is being championed by the Department of Science and Innovation, there are many challenges that are faced up by education in Africa, such as, for example, the lack of resources and the difficulty for students to get jobs because of poverty, and also the disparity that exists in terms of education opportunities. The development of education can only develop through the provision of funds. In Algeria, for example, the only African country which guarantees free education from primary education to secondary up to university education. There is free education to all the Algerians. And we must also say that Algeria has invested in human resources and also has invested in cooperation in Africa. Algeria, which is hosting thousands of African students in various disciplines for free. Algeria sends thousands of students for long-term training abroad with Algerian scholarships. And the honorable who said that we have the Algerian University Institute, which is located in Tlemcen, which is made up of students coming from 54 countries in Africa. As a Pan-African Parliament, we should work in order to implement the Agenda 2063 of the AU in order to develop the education base of Africa and bring out our peoples from darkness to light. And after the education of the peoples, also, we must also bridge the gap of unemployment and come up with a common vision in order to ensure a prosperous future of our peoples. I thank you.
Merci beaucoup, Madame la.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair, Mr. Director. You have the floor to respond or to react to the comments of colleagues. Thank you. Thank you very much, Chair. We would like to thank the honorable parliamentarians for the concerns raised, but also to the contributions that have been made, because many of them are also contributions. I think there are a certain number of questions that are cross-cutting. Some concern training, technical and professional training. I'll hand over to my colleague because there is a strategy which we call CIVET, which is a strategy for teaching and of technical education, which was adopted by the African Union, and which, if applied correctly, will address most of your concerns. The learners who are not predestined to do a general curriculum, it is not everybody who is supposed to follow the same academic program. Some are good with practical subjects, artisanry and technical skills should be given the opportunity to get those technical skills and technical education that they require. Those who want to go to university can do so. Those who want to be a good tailor, a good barber, who have skills for artisanry should be given the opportunity for technical education. And so I'm going to hand over to my colleague to address this specific concern. Go ahead.
When it comes to technical vocational education and training, we are in the same boat with the honorable members who have spoken on with regards to the subject matter. We for sure recognize that to improve the occupational prospect of young people on the continent, TVET is the way to go. Because with conventional higher education, the issue on relevant skills has always been a question. The issue of universities not providing skilled manpower to fill the relevant employment opportunities has always been an issue. And the only way to solve that big question is to focus on technical vocation education and training systems. But we are also of the opinion that government cannot do TVET alone. Because if you check, quite frankly, the ultimate beneficiaries of TVET are the private sector. And that brings us to your question, Honorable Member. What innovative ways could we use to address the issue of funding for the TVET sector? In our view, and if you check the TVET strategy, we've attempted to answer that question by encouraging private sector engagement. Government must fashion out a way to allow private sector, who are the ultimate beneficiaries of these critical sectors that technical and vocational education and training supports, to piggyback into that portfolio. I mean, support through CSR, corporate social responsibilities. We were in Tunisia last year and we saw the good work that the National TVET Institution, the benefits they get from the private sector. To what extent can that be replicated in member states? Some countries are doing wonderfully well with regards to that linkage. They not only benefit from the private sector, but also the institutions training relevant skills that speaks to the needs of the private sector, because they are also engaged. The issue of occupational standards is addressed at the entry level, is addressed at the institutional level. The private sector knows what to expect when it comes to occupational standard. They have a role to play in design of the curricula. All of those conversations can only happen if the enabling environment between the private sector and the institutions are there? What are the tax benefits for these private sectors within those conversations? And that is the role of government within this space. And we encourage same. That is the innovative funding mechanism that we will propose if we are to answer your question. But honorable members, it is also important to state that at the level of the Commission, there are programs that are in place. As you know, first and foremost, it is important to state that the role of the Commission is to set the continental direction in terms of policy frameworks. Member states have the ultimate mandate, responsibility to implement those directions. And I think it is important to lay that foundation. To the extent with which member states implement those policy direction, and I think that brings us to your second question, has always been a big question. But we stand guided by the Honorable House as a relevant organ of the Union on how best to improve on the relationship, be it horizontally or vertically, amongst the relevant organs of the Union. The Parliament has that power as an organ of the Union. The Union is yours.
We don't have power. This is the problem. This is the problem of the Union. This is the problem of the Union.
Where's that?
For 1 year, more than 1 year, you never met.
So I think, Your Excellencies, to say that closer collaboration is in fact very necessary. What I'm hearing from the room is that if parliamentarians are aware of some of these instruments that exist, they can support us more and they can work more for the Commission. And this is something we are taking. Back with us. That will be disturbing the Secretariat, the clerk, to inform them of what we are doing at the Commission level. And maybe instead of only focusing on the executive, we see the Parliament as an alternative pathways to, adoption and ratification of some of our strategies. But that's to say that there could be complementarity. There could be ways to complement all the efforts and make sure that everyone is brought on board with regards to all of the relevant instruments that we have.
Go. Mr. Chairman, you are right, you are not right. You are not right because of how perhaps you view the role of Parliament in our various countries. If you talk about ratification of a decision of AU, how does it go to Parliament? A member of the executive must table that in Parliament for Parliament to ratify. Parliament on its own will not initiate the process. The process of ratification must be triggered by a member of the executive. It is brought to Parliament, then Parliament is seized with the opportunity to peruse it and ratify. So when the executive, the AU ministers meet, a decision is taken, they don't take the trouble to trigger the process of bringing the issue for which ratification is required to Parliament. How will Parliament ratify? If there's nothing, there is no action. That's what it is. So to continue to say that it is Parliament, let's look at the other side, where the action must start from, and whip that side. I know you lack the capacity to whip that. I also lack the capacity to whip that angle, but something must be done. My question is, let us all meet and brainstorm on a sanction regime. We can get to a point. The sanction regime must be discussed. We shouldn't gloss over it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Merci beaucoup. Merci, Honor.
Thank you very much. We will give you 2 minutes to respond, and then we're going to close. Thank you very much, Chair. I just like to thank my colleague for his explanations, as well as the honorable parliamentarian from Ghana. The honorable parliamentarian from Ghana who said that who raised the problem in his comments. That is really the key challenge that the African Union is facing. One other parliamentarian also spoke about it. I think the parliamentarian from Cape Verde, that if we have to succeed, we must change. You said it yourself. You cannot ratify what you really did not initiate and something you were not associated in. Even at the level of the commission, we are facing the same challenge. The decision-making authority lies elsewhere. And that is really the root of the issue. In terms of preparing the agenda, it is the PRC, the Committee of Permanent Representatives, that during its meeting, we are just secretaries, admin staff. They decide and make proposals to the ministers of foreign affairs or sectoral ministers who also make suggestions, and it is forwarded to the Conference of Heads of State. So that is really how the Commission operates. Whereas with this modus operandi, each permanent representative, that is each ambassador, will tell you that their country is independent and sovereign, and that they use those sovereignty prerogatives to advance their own interests. And so when are we going to achieve all this? That is why when I was responding to the parliamentarian from Somalia, I said I had this fortune or misfortune from the first week to participate in this meeting. As a university lecturer, I was really disappointed. I had the same analysis that you had. I was very disappointed, and I was asking myself when all these ideals are going to help Africa move forward if we cannot try and work towards a common goal, have common objectives. We cannot make progress. That is why my colleagues and myself, we think that the parliament, in its definition, in its parliamentary attributions, if it's really a parliament, should have the powers. The powers, yes. But unfortunately, you do not have those. Yeah, I agree. But unfortunately, you don't have those powers yet. Exactly. So it is the same problem that you raised with regards to funding for education, the funding of education system. In all the strategies and documents, we call on the states to ensure that with national budgets that at least 20 to 25% is allocated for education. But that is never done. So how do we achieve it? You gave very good examples. And I say that just one country, any African country has the possibility to fund these universities. But unfortunately, they don't want to do it, or we are not doing it. And if we do not invest, how do we get to the level of Korea, like someone was saying earlier? But it is for us to have the reflections that will help our countries, bring our countries to this. And that is the role that we have in terms of advisory and proposals. That's what we can do to bring our leaders to change their position. I will end here, Chair. We are unanimous. We agree on the same point. We are going to work together on this issue of education and make the suggestions necessary for our states to advance the agenda of the African continent. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Director. Professor Saidu Madugu, you you wanted to meet with us, and we started this meeting at 2:10. It is about 4:30, and so we've had discussion for about 2 hours, 16 minutes. And during these discussions, we retain the fact that the education system is still underfunded, and funding challenge needs to be resolved. We also say that we have to adapt our local languages, so that our learners can learn in their mother tongue and learn more up to skills and be better equipped for higher learning. And we also say that it was important to harmonize the curricula in order to facilitate the integration of students and movement of students from one country to another. We also asked for more information to be given to us on the Pan-African institutes. And you said that there's only one Pan-African institute, but that you have different schools in different zones on the continent. And so this is a decentralized model under one umbrella. And in terms of accreditation of the qualifications, we also spoke about that, so that from Cote d'Ivoire to Ghana, through South Africa and Angola, we should not struggle with equivalence assessments. And also that really is about the theme of academic mobility. And finally, we spoke at length about the training, which is adapted to the needs of the society, and this is the technical and vocational training, which is very important because for us developing countries, we still have a lot of work to do on the ground before we move upwards. And so our countries need to invest more in technical and vocational training so that the private sector has the skills necessary to increase production and so on. Honorable members, Mr. Director, Mr. Clerk, Madam Chair, I would like to honestly thank you for dedicating your time, these 2 hours, 16 minutes that we have used well, and hopefully the resolutions that emerge from these discussions shall not be abandoned somewhere, but that we are going to use everything that we got from this third session of the third ordinary session of the Pan-African Parliament to prepare clear resolutions that shall be forwarded to the African Union through the Department of Education, Science, Technology and Innovation. Thank you. We've come to the end of our meeting. Thank you.
OK. Merci beaucoup, honorable. Vous avez bien entendu.
Thank you very much, honorable.
The register is here. Maybe. I have signed that. Thank you.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. I'll see you.
Yes, ma'am. Please come and give the chocolate per parliamentarian. Thank you.